That's a total we got. 40 point.
And then that was for the,
Yeah.
this is for the trial too.
Pardon me.
Was the 200 for the trial too?
Yeah. So it's 700,000 for the trial. There's
Okay,
mostly mental health supports.
gotcha, that's where I was
Yeah.
confused.
Okay. I just want to thank you all for coming and for coming to listen to what we have to say in terms of our very historic meeting that we had today. And it was historic because of the fact that we had the federal minister as well as the deputy minister from Ottawa who was present, the premier of the province of Manitoba, and as well as the mayor of Winnipeg. And this was a request that we made on behalf of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and on behalf of the families, the Myran and families that came today. We asked for this meeting specifically to ensure that the families didn't become political yo-yos amongst governments, because governments tend to do that. They'll make decisions and then they will send you off to the next level of government to get the answers that you seek. As you're very much aware that this work has been done over the last 15 months, and the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, along with the families, have done a lot of work, have ensured that that we lobbied the governments, and that we produced 2 documents, and even that is historic, that we were asked to produce a document to search the landfill for our loved ones. There has been other searches of landfills for other people. They were never asked to produce a feasibility study to see how worthwhile or how costly it would be to search the landfills. But we were asked to do that, and we did. The first initial amount that was given to do the first feasibility study was $500,000, which came from the federal government. The second document, the operational plan, which we completed in January and was given out to the province, cost $740,000. So a lot of money has been spent to convince governments to do the right thing. And today, in meeting with our with the federal government and the provincial government, there was a commitment from them to search the landfills. The province of Manitoba committed $20 million. The federal government committed $20 million. The province also committed $500,000 for the families while they are going to be going through the trial process. And the federal government committed $200,000 for the mental well-being of the families while they are going to be going through this process, this heartbreaking process. So today's a very bittersweet day. It's a sense of relief, but yet work needs to be done. And it's timing. the work that needs to be done is timing. So I'd like to thank the families, the Marcedes, Myran, and Morgan Harris families, but not to forget Buffalo woman, that we never ever did find out who she was, that we never ever did find out who her family was or where she came from, as well as Rebecca Contois, and the other countless First Nation women that are missing in this province and that are missing in this country. We pray that they will find their way home somehow, somewhere. So I'm going to hand it over to Cambria to speak. So.
Which Grand Chief? First off, I would like to thank the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs for always being there for every step of the way from the very beginning of the homicide announcement on December 1st, 2022. Today and every day moving forward will be very, very tough. But we did get a commitment today of $20 million from the provincial government and from the federal government. So that's a total of $40 million to search the landfill. Wob Canoe in his ears, that threw me for a loop. Okay. Wob Canoe in his words said that we are going to search every cubic meter of cell 13 where my mother, Morgan, and Marcedes are laying. They have also committed funding, $500,000 as well as $200,000 for mental health supports to help the families during the hard time of the trial to come up ahead, where the families will be sitting in the room with the serial killer, listening to what happened to our loved ones over the course of 2 months. I would like to say that I am very grateful for these commitments going forward, and I hope that we can continue to provide transparency to members of the public, community members, as well as the families. And I pray that one day we will see justice. Thank you. If anyone has questions.
Is there any questions?
Yeah.
This is obviously significantly less money than what both of the feasibility studies that you guys paid for indicated was necessary. Are you disappointed in the level of financial commitment that you received from the levels of government?
It's bittersweet because we did have, we stressed throughout the documents that we prepared, but it's a start. And it's very important that this process starts and keeps continuing. And that's the question that we ask the governments as well. Okay, is there going to be a time where we're going to have to come back? We don't want to go back and back again and whatnot, to be able to ask that this work be complete. We want to see this work be completed. We want to ensure that we find the loved ones that have been there for 15 months now, and that we be able to, hopefully, God willing, that we be able to find them and that we be able to bring them home.
What was the response from those in the meeting when you indicated that you don't want to have to go back again and again?
It was a start, and that's something that the minister, the federal minister, was online with us, and we did relay that to him. So everything is a start, and like I said earlier, it's very bittersweet to come and to be here and to actually have both levels of government commit to a search that we've been waiting for a long time now.
What are the next steps for you folks then?
Well, we are very much aware as well that the trial is going to happen. And so we're very much aware as well that we don't want to impede, or we don't want to do anything to ensure that he be going through the system himself through trial. So we will we'll have to look at the time frames as to when we will be able to start doing the work.
You may wait until after the trial's concluded?
It might be, maybe there's some stuff that we can do prior to that, because a lot of the issues that arise, we need to be able to train people, we need to be able to purchase such and such to be able to start that process.
So have you been given advice then to wait until the trial?
You got to read between the lines, as the Premier said, so we are reading between the lines.
What's the earliest a search could start? Did anyone?
We didn't really go that far in terms of as to when the search can actually start. We know that hopefully if the trial ends within a certain period of time, then we'd be ready to start doing the work.
Do you have any concerns, though, that, excuse me, that even this trial is just potentially one step in a long process? There could be appeals and so forth, which often take extended periods of time.
Correct. Yeah.
So is it possible that this could be
Well,
years before?
No. I hope that whatever happens in terms of the trial be done within a certain period of time. We've got to realize that when people go through the system that of going into the courts, that it's up to the jury that's going to determine whether it's guilty or not, whatever it is. But in the meantime, we will start preparing to do the work.
Grand Chief, you mentioned the monetary funding from the province and from the federal government. What was the city's role in this meeting?
The city's role, we've always ensured that the mayor was involved in this whole process, and initially it had to do with land when we first started our discussions in terms of where we would situate the facility where we would be doing the work. So he's still a part of the table, and he along with the province, he works with the province in terms of that.
In terms of the amount that's been committed, I'm sure there's a lot of steps to come, but does the committee now have to sort of take a look at the feasibility report versus this funding commitment to kind of see what works in terms of number of staff or equipment, for example, or that on-site facility? Like, do you have to kind of take another look at things and see what will fit within that amount of money?
Well, we will talk to our people as well that developed our documents, and there are our First Nation people that we reached out to be able to do the work for us. And so there's always give and take in terms of how the work should be done. So those discussions need to happen, and hopefully eventually with the province as well with the federal government. There's still very much so a part of the outcome of what's going to be happening in terms of searching the landfills.
Cambria, I'm wondering, how do you feel? Do you feel like in a certain way today you read that them?
Like, how do I feel after the commitments? I can say that I am grateful that there is a commitment being made. It's been a long road, and back in January, I myself filed a complaint of discrimination against the province of Manitoba as well as the previous Progressive Conservative Party for the levels of discrimination faced by my families over the last year. So I can definitely say that it is a step forward for Indigenous peoples, and it's about taking back that narrative and from those who stole it from us, and it's going to be survivor and family-led going forward. And I'm glad to hear that the Premier is willing to work with their families and with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs going forward to not only be there for the families in terms of the landfill search, but to also address a very real and ongoing crisis that continues to affect not only the livelihood, but the well-being and safety of our Indigenous people each and every single day. So, yeah.
Has there been any indication from the province or the feds that this funding is just a start? Like, could there potentially become more funding from them?
Well, that's the question that needs to be asked, right? Like what they said was, yes, it is $40 million, right? So there's a lot of work that we can do within the $40 million, but to be able to, once we get there, the avenues is to be able to request for more if need be. We don't know that, and we don't know, like maybe we go to the landfill, but they're gonna search every, what was
Cubic
it?
meter.
Cubic meter of the cell. So that was a guarantee from the Premier himself today. So hopefully, when we do start the search, that it shouldn't. I hope and pray that it doesn't take long to find our loved ones.
Cambria, so the province and the federal government are giving money for mental health supports. Is this first financial support that the families have received for mental health during this time?
They supported during the last pretrial, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So they did provide funding for the pretrial back in November when we were going for those 2 weeks. We had trauma supports there, which were Indigenous-led organizations, which was really, really helpful. They as well as provided funding to be able to just rent out a room for a family to be able to have a safe space, because it's emotionally tolling to sit in those rooms surrounded by grief and just gruesome realities. So yeah.
Can you maybe explain why this support for mental health is important to you and to the families?
This is incredibly important to the families. Being someone who struggles with mental health myself and a survivor at that, it's incredibly important, you know, growing up all throughout my life in the child welfare system, missing my mom. I was in and out of psych wards, crisis centers and shelters. Like, I was in hospitals. We need those supports, and that was back then when I was missing my mom while she was still alive. And now that my mom's gone, it's vital and imperative for these families to have these supports as they go on through this, not only the judicial process, but beyond that, because it's tough. It's tough, and the grief is a reality each and every single day for the people who have to go through these situations. And it's statistically known that we do have the highest suicide rates. So if something were to ever happen to our families, yeah, it would fall on the government's decisions and the impacts of that. So yeah, it's incredibly crucial to be there for the families during this time.
The fact that the federal and the provincial governments both put in $20 million, which is obviously below what you guys had previously been asking for, do you take that as the levels of government deciding that the estimates were not valid, or do you take it as that they were only willing to go there regardless of the merit to your estimates?
I don't think it was either. I think it was a matter of just what they were able. I don't think it was either of those. I think it was a matter of what they were able to commit. Given that there is a system in place and only there's so many processes that you do have to go through, I think that he's doing what he can with what he can at this very moment in time. And as we go through these steps together, we will continue to have these conversations as they go on. And while I can't give a definitive answer right now on that, I can assure you that it certainly was not that.
Cambria Grand Chief, you both fought so much for this at this point, right? You just even earlier this month, you were at the footsteps of the legislature still asking for this. And this seems like a big step in some ways, right, as you've described. I guess you've been already asked this question, but I'm going to ask it in a different way again. How do you really feel? Like, where is your head at? I think a lot of people are just sort of wondering, what is it that you're thinking in this time?
It gives me a bit of hope, because yes, this is for my mom, but this is also for every little Indigenous kid out there who never had a say growing up, every Indigenous kid who never had a voice. Morgan was one of those kids who grew up within the child welfare system and was failed at that repeatedly. Through the child welfare system, through the system after getting her kids taken away, to becoming homeless and falling on the streets and a victim of whatever monsters lurked within the shadows of society. And it's about showing that our Indigenous women, our Indigenous people, that we're worth it, we're loved, and we are more than worth searching for. It's about sending that message that, like as the Premier said, it's the principle of trying, and that's the least we can do, right? Is to show that we are going to be there, and I'm going to continue this work not only for my mom, but for the victims and the survivors that I work with each and every single day, for the kids in care, for every little Indigenous kid that was ever failed out there through these systems. That's who I do it for.
Because you mentioned something that really stuck with me, and I talked to the Premier about that a lot during this middle portion there, as you were going to be informed today. I'm the glove, I'm the
Yeah.
from the glove. The thing that he brought up to me, which I brought up to him a lot, was really interesting about this idea that, is you mentioned it and you said it a couple times, especially at the legislature, Cambria, like this idea that it isn't just about, and you brought it up just now about your mom, it's about everybody who goes missing, that the past government was saying, if they go missing, we're not going to look for you. Like, what kind of precedent does that set? And do you feel that has changed now with this government? It's 6 months into their, mandate, right? And they're making this step. It seemed like it wasn't going to happen just even a few weeks ago.
Well, from the very beginning, from when Premier had been elected, he had always been there from the beginning for the families. He had sat us down and apologized for the harm and distress caused by the previous government.
And you smoked a pipe, right? Like,
yeah.
as you said, yeah.
We smoked a ceremonial pipe where he committed to search the landfill, and we talked about that today too, where he said he holds that to such a high honor that he is going to commit to anything that he says during those moments when we do have ceremony, as well as, just the fact that it's about fighting for past generations, future generations. It's about being that voice for the voiceless and for those who can no longer be here. And yeah.
I think it's, I'm sorry, I just got a frog in my throat again. But anyway, we went to the ledge for a purpose on International Women's Day. And we completed our operational plan back in January. And so there was a time frame of almost 2 months where there was no feedback to this whole process. So we have to do that in order to be heard, it seems, in this province. And not to say that the federal government as well, the federal minister was awaiting the outcome of the provincial elections in this province. And that was another issue that we had to deal with. But they were talking, the province and the feds were talking to each other and whatnot. And in terms of the operational plan that that was commissioned by the federal government, is something that we have put a lot of time into to be able to ensure that our women do not end up in landfills. And that nowhere across the country should our women end up in landfills moving forward. And that is something that we carry true to our hearts because of all the work that we have done in terms of that, in terms of all our missing and murdered Indigenous women in this country. So people have to be mindful as to when they take on the seriousness of what's been happening here in this province of Manitoba.
The feasibility study and the operational report both mentioned that they gave estimates. If a search goes for 1 year, for example, it could potentially cost up to this amount. 40 million, do you know how far or how long a search could last?
Well, that's something that we all have to determine at this point in time. We're not very, we can't really comment on it because of, we have to go back and to ensure that we look at the work that needs to be done.
We're about a month outside of the start of the trial. And I just wanted to see how you're preparing for this. It's going to be, sure, a very emotional, long, almost a month and a half or so.
Yeah. Back in November when I sat through that pre-trial, I'm not gonna lie, those were the 2 hardest weeks of my life that I've ever had to have gone through. No one's ever emotionally prepared to go sit in a room with a serial killer and then listen on top of it what they did to your mother, what they did to your family, what they did to your communities, how they affected the generations surrounding you, before you and after you. And it angered me. It really, really angered me to know that someone would be so emboldened and racist in this world to target an Indigenous woman for simply being Indigenous. And so I use that as my strength to continue to keep going and to continue to push forward this work that's very imperative to address the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited. And this 2 months isn't going to be easy. It's going to be tough. And families are going to have to stand together as one. And we as a community need to stand together as one. Because when these things affect our families, it not only just affects our families, it affects our communities, it affects anyone surrounding that, it affects any of our allies who have been a part of this fight over the last year. You know, this is now affecting the human rights of not only Indigenous people, but people across the world. And so it's imperative to continue to pay attention to very real and ongoing issues like the trial going on, the landfill search, so that we may make those decisions in the future to continue to combat these issues.
You mentioned the fight that your family and our family have faced. It's been a long road for both families, lots of ups and downs. What's kept you going? What has sort of kept you going through this fight?
It's the fact that I don't have my mom. My mom's lying in a landfill, and there's no right or wrong way to grieve. Grief is not a linear pattern, and I've gone through every stage of it over the last year. I've been angry, I've been sad, I've gone through every emotion out there, but I've also used that to turn it into something beautiful, and I use it to help my people, and I use it to help my communities, and I use it to help victims and survivors. And I think that's really just been my biggest strength over the last year, is just I was sick of people controlling my narrative. I was sick of people telling me what they will and will not do with my mother's body. And so it was time for me to take that back for not only me, not only for my mother, but for my people and for my communities. And that's why it's so vital, so vital to continue to keep speaking about this, to continue to keep pushing back. Even when the world tells you what's wrong, what you're doing is wrong and you think it's right, just keep going, because I'm going to get there and I'm going to keep pushing. And I think they know that. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming. And we'll keep you updated.
Oh, okay. Now I can go get my...